I'm not too late in the forenoon. Let me say good morning to all the honorable guests assembled in Delhi. I speak from faraway Trivandrum, the southern part of this continent. Let me pick up the threads from the speaker who spoke just now about conventions. I think signing conventions is very often a paper, exercise, and whether countries wish to do it or not depends on a large number of political and now global geopolitical considerations. But I think signing conventions happen at a more subtler and important level, namely the human commitment to certain values which go across and do not belong to any particular country today. So I suppose the fact that we are assembled here to talk about rule of law as an international concern is to sign as many conventions as possible mentally and with commitment to promote all the conventions as part of a global commitment to peace and good life for all humanity. And Prashant Kumar wanted me to talk about the cross-border terrorism. It's easy to talk about it in terms of what happened in the past couple of decades, and particularly concerning India. We tend to talk about terrorism in general, and then we also tend to, while talking about that, we bring all those aspects of what is anathema to human peace and human welfare without any distinctions whatsoever across caste, religion, faith, creed, etc. But before I would probably express my thoughts on cross-border terrorism, I think it's important for us, an international body of lawyers who are assembled here in Delhi, and as often as we assemble like this, wherever we are assembling, I think it's important for us to have certain common pledges. The world has closed its doors to Cold War, and it had its own implications for human development across the globe on an equal regard and equal status basis. It's good that we do not allow any more Cold Wars to become part of a global human transaction, understanding, and relationships. Secondly, it's equally important that we do not only have Cold Wars, but we do not have covert or open wars any longer on this planet. Any war, by ones of using instruments of terror, coercion, or such compulsions, I think, are antithetical to human understanding of peace and being fundamentally good to each and every one of us. The third pledge I probably thought would be that we have crossed a long way in understanding rule of law from its early nascent stages and years, mostly coined and dictated either by global institutions such as World Bank or etc. I think it's important for us to plunge a little more deeply into knowing rule of law as something building relationship between human beings. And if for the individual human being, I do not have faith in law and would not like to abide by law in all its expansive dimension, then there is rule of law is the first casualty at my level. Therefore, it's important for us that to say all legal fraternities and associations will be able to say that we must turn a new chapter understanding rule of law, not merely as one between a state and a citizen, but between all human beings where, to use his expression, equal regard and equal status of all human beings to pursue the best in their dignity and the worth of being human, I think is the ultimate and the goal of human law and the ultimate driving factor of rule of law. If that's how it's going to look at it, I think there is no room in any part of the world, not only in India, in any part of the world, to talk about cross-border terrorism. I think it's important for us to say that whatever a faith or a creed or religion may think about its own importance in delivering personal, pursuits of human freedom, etc., it's important for us to say that no faith, no creed, no understanding, no religion will say that you will use violence as the only means of settling human, transaction or human disagreement. Having said that, I think let me share a few words on why we need to have a new dimensions understanding of rule of law, and therefore we will certainly talk about not cross-border terrorism as an isolated concern of few countries in the world. Generally, it's being taught. One of the historians of violence says that violence across the world has come down, and one does not know whether it really depicts the correct picture. But historians hold mirrors unto us as if to help us to learn and chart our destiny on this planet, on lessons drawn from the past, whether it's dialectical materialism or any other school. The offer is to assist us in planning our future. Volumes have been written on how violence has been the way of resolving differences or for social, geographical, or religious hegemony. Optimists predict that violence as the means of going around a problem is on the wane. I suppose gatherings like this will certainly put a stamp on that the wane will not revert. We can attribute a significant decline in violence to many factors. The decline and end of colonial occupations, the decline and end of old religious colonization or hegemonical ventures by force, the decline and end of national wars, the emergence of the idea of constitution and representative democracy, the emergence and entrenchment of ideas of rights that can be enforced through impartial tribunals, particularly human rights, civil, political, social, economic, and cultural. Can there be one all-embracing concept, definition, or comprehension of rule of law? Is rule of law an evolution and amalgamation of several political and social ideas, ultimately tuned to limit and tame all arbitrary power, private to public? As we move after post-WTO regime to the emergence of private power on dictating how our minds will work, how our thoughts can be controlled and directed, is an important question, important for rule of law. And is it therefore more closely connected to institutionalize of all social and governance processes, private processes, technology, and all the force of technology, in order that justice, equality before law, and accountability to power, all power we're talking about, are secured by orderly and published, transparent, and accountability procedures and rules. It's going to be a huge challenge as we march into the next machine age where technology is virtually taken over the way we think, the way we act, the way we conduct our transactions. And it's therefore important for us when we talk about cross-border terrorism, where all possible means are pursued to ensure that peace and good means are put on the table. So therefore, why do we need the thin and the thick varieties of rule of law, as we often talked about, and what do they conceal? Political ideologies dressed in new clothes, and I think it's in that context that therefore it's important to talk about giving finally a closure to the Cold War and the new world war that may emerge by using technology and then clothing it with all kinds of new shapes and frames of ideological dialogue. That's why I think cross-border terrorism can take a new shape and then emerge as a wolf in a sheep's clothes. So several statements on the high ground of law and subjection of all people to it and the relevance of rights in securing them have been made in the past. They were made in the context of diverse historical backgrounds and social order. Is it not that they are either partial or incomplete for current universal global reception in view of the neoliberal economic spread and the technological driven globalization, which poses several unprecedented global and local challenges? Or is it that we need to acknowledge multiple concepts of rule of law with common denominators and additional layers of significance? I think it's important for the fraternity of lawyers to ponder on these aspects and to say that we are going to talk about 2030, 2050, sustainable goals of development, etc. But before all that really happens, I think it's important for us to lay our books very clean on what exactly would be the dominating aspects of rule of law and what all forces, private, public, technology, science, and all that controls our mind and thought will be subject to principles of accountability, transparency, and all that. I think that's where cross-border terrorism comes in as far as India is concerned. I don't want to talk about very explosive political issues that have led to recent development because that may have certain partial ways of looking at it. But in order to be impartial and neutral, I still think that no country in the world would like to embrace violence of any sort, notwithstanding the recent wars that are still raging around the globe for no good reason. Therefore, if a legal fraternity can be a great and a sound emerging voice across the globe, and I'm sure New Delhi is a good place to be that emerging and resounding voice against all forms of violence between nations, between peoples, between faiths, between creeds and individuals. And therefore, the rule of law convention being convened here today, with all international legal fraternity can come here to join hands in a common resolve that we will explore all potentials of rule of law that will ensure that there is no room for any violence on any part of any individual or state entity or private power sectors, etc., in order that we know all that wonderful, valuable riches of our traditions and culture. For over several thousand years, it's said that the only way to live in peace is to understand each other. And cross-border terrorism is a great obstacle to understanding each other. And we have certain concern, particularly to India, but I think since they are so politically involved, I only wish to say India will be the first country to begin to draft and declare and invite all the legal fraternity assembled here today to say that we will no longer permit or be party to any aspect, direct or indirect, overt or covert forms of violence. I think that will take us the next generation of rule of law. We have all kinds of instruments, political, social, economic, across the world. The UN covenants and conventions have given us rich harvests of thought. But still, if you're not able to really ensure that large millions of people across the globe in different parts of countries and countries have not been able to secure what would like to secure, namely dignity and the worthy of life and a worthy life. How do we therefore ensure that? We have a long way to go, but I'm sure that when we launch on this new understanding of rule of law, where absolute room for violence is issued, I think we will be party to the next generation, post-UN declaration of 1948. And I think that's going to be a great contribution in the Assembly of New Delhi. And I think not because I'm an Indian, but India has many things to offer to the rest of the world. India has offered it in the past. India will continue to offer it in the future. And I was speaking to Prashant some time ago that it is time that there is a New Delhi convention where we talk about the post-1948 developments and lessons learned from the 1948 UN declaration and the lessons to be laid on for the future. And this rule of law convention, I'm sure, will be one such New Delhi convention to be a beginning for eschewing all violence and all peace to be promoted at all costs. And I'm sorry I am not physically present there. I would love to be part of any further deliberation, but I said the New Delhi Convention will be the beginning of a new era and understanding rule of law so that all of us live in wonderful peace and something which probably humanity has not seen and witnessed so far. In a nutshell, we seem to be at a crossroads. Either we hold the rule of law debate is no longer confined to controlling arbitrary power through supremacy of law, repeating importance of equality and cataloging rights, or we stand by the emerging demand that rule of law must get into fundamental questions of political processes, social process, economic process through which rights, duties, expectations and needs are debated and administered. Constitutions are abided by. Discretions and public policy choices are open to correction, and that no dispensations of any sort are made under cover of assumed wisdom of any system of economic or political ordering. We will not be merely discussing impartial courts, fair trials, known laws enforced through known published procedures, and we are now called upon to resolving conflicts and antinomies generated by capitalism, freedom of property and contract, access to and control of community resources, on the one hand, in the name of innovation that will eventually meet all human needs, and social control of all human activities, on the other, through regulation and intense supervision in the name of social justice or socialistic legality. Strangely, some countries have chosen hybrid models of organized freedom and social controls, which have become laboratories for pundits of economic and social studies. Of course, I think in this context, the Rule of Law Convention assumes importance. We need to have a code for a new rule of law, and who else can frame this code except the fraternity of lawyers gathered from all across the globe. I thank you for your attention, and I'm sure we'll be on a long but a quick and comfortable journey on understanding and unraveling the new dimension of the rule of law. Thank you so much.
Attorney General, for your insightful exposition on this very delicate issue of balancing the need to protect our values against terrorists who do not believe in such without compromising with the basic legal principles. Thank you, Learned Attorney General, for that.